Colon Therapy Center, Janet Eileen Mitchell, right out at Callaway and Brimhall. They're here in Bakersfield. People raving about the health benefits they're experiencing from this gentle therapy. The website at bakersfieldcolonics.com. Our great friends at Cruise Through Car Wash, 7 locations here in Bakersfield. Just 5 minutes in and you're out with a beautiful car wash.
We'd like to thank our friends over at Kern Construction and Electric Incorporated. Robert Miller, the longtime resident here, he specializes in the remodeling of homes and businesses. He can be contacted at 661-322-5554. Chuck and Wendy Noss, owners of Nature's Food Market and Juice Bar, for delicious, healthy food, fresh juices and smoothies, and the best advice about your good health. Visit them at 2008th Street, right here in Bakersfield, across from the Fox Theater. Call to place an order at 661-327-4430 and like them on Facebook.
Dr. Vinod Kumar and his associates at the Vascular and Leg Center at 5020 Commerce Drive here in Bakersfield. Dr. Kumar has a passion and a new treatment to prevent amputations caused by diabetes. Go to his website at thevascularandlegcenter.com for information and an appointment.
Thank you to all of our sponsors for continuing to support Open Up.
And if you're just joining us or staying with us, Don Clark here with Bob Prater, and we're talking about a Lord who swats you on the butt and sends you into the game. I love it. So anyway, Bob, take it away, and I've got a story to tell just as soon as it's appropriate. So
okay. I'd like to shift gears just for a moment, and you've hooked up with Al Jones, who is Pastor Al Jones, the pastor of the River here in Bakersfield. And Al, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about Mexico, because I remember you had come back from Mexico, and suddenly you saw something a little bit different and a little bit expansive for Doug. Can you talk about that?
Can I jump in real quick? Not to be disrespectful to you.
Well, it is slightly disrespectful.
Myself and my wife and our organization and our Safe House Restoration Ranch, the clients and staff, we all felt a pulling and a call to the river, and so that's where we're at now. We're based out of the River Church here in Bakersfield.
Awesome. Al?
I was down in Mexico this past summer doing a school of ministry with a pastoral friend down there that I've known for a few years, and I was standing outside his church looking over the valley where the Tijuana River is, and his church is in a colonia up in the hills, and asked him a couple questions, and he started telling me the history of Tijuana. And he said, this city started as a brothel. I said, I wasn't aware of that. And he said, yeah, in fact, it's named after the madam. Aunt Jane Tijuana was the madam of the brothel. And as soon as he said that, I saw, in my mind's eye, I saw Doug and like a spiritual daughter down there, a gal from Tijuana, a clinical psychologist who went to away to a ministry school, came back, didn't open her practice back up, but felt like a call to open a prayer house right in the middle of the red light district of Tijuana. And same heart as Doug and his group. And I felt like, man, if I connect those two together, there'll be some synergy. And so I came back and talked with Doug and his folks, and Doug was all into it, and said, well, this thing feels like it's going international anyway. Do you guys have passports? Some of his crew didn't, or they needed to be renewed, and it was like, well, let's get them. Kind of like a prophetic act. Here we go.
Right.
So the Lord patted him on the butt. I got him passports, and so we've been down there twice, and dots just keep connecting. I had just seen getting him and Anna together. Since they're farther down the road, Doug's group is, as far as rescuing women. It's a different situation in Mexico. It's much more intense. It's legal there, but I mean, here we drive down Union and some other places in the city, and we'll see 8, 10, 12 sometimes or something people that we interact with, but we're driving a few miles. In Mexico, in the red light district, there's a woman every 5 feet. And so there's hundreds of women within a city block. And
now you told me, Al, about being propositioned by a young girl. How old was she?
Probably 12.
About 12 years old, being propositioned.
Yeah.
That's something that we don't see every day in Bakersfield either. So,
right.
Average age that a girl enters into prostitution is 12 to 14 years old. And we're seeing those numbers, but they're sporadic. As we were walking in the red light district, we divided up into teams, and we each had a woman that spoke Spanish as our lead person to give away the backpacks. We give away backpacks now. We no longer give away money, but with the backpacks that we give away, just as I was walking with my team, one guy made eye contact with me, and there was a little girl, maybe 12, that was standing there. And I looked at her, and then I looked back at him, and he goes, do you see something you want? He goes, I can get you anything you want. I said, no, I'm cool. And looking the way I do, I have tattoos and whatnot, and walking around that red light district, I had several men walk up to me and go, anything you want, anything you need, I can get it for you right now. So, and the girls they're some are 3 feet, some are 5 feet away from each other, and in a 3-block radius, maybe you'll see 400 women at any given time working, being sold.
Now, Don, I've gone out with Doug and with Al on Union Avenue. They go out on alternating Friday nights. They call them street reaches, and what really stunned me as we went into the motels, and for anyone who's ever spent any time on Union Avenue, it's not just what you see on the surface. These motels and trailer parks go way deep. And so as we pulled into some of the motels, I felt like I was in Amsterdam, because there were women who were standing in the doorways or in the windows, scantily clad, advertising, I'm right here for you as you pull in. You can't see them from the street. You have to go into the motel. And that's what happens right here in this city. And what they're seeing in Tijuana, they're saying is a much bigger deal. Now, you said you had a story.
I do, but first I want to ask Doug and these guys that approach you, the pimps, the guys that handle the women, have you ever felt you've had any positive influence or impact on their lives, on any one of their lives?
Yeah, so a few years ago, we were ministering to a girl. Her street name was Lachey, and real nice gal, but probably for the first 6 months, she wouldn't take a backpack. She wouldn't even respond to us. But after a while, she told us her name and how many kids she had. And we were always real leery of talking to her because there was always a man in the shadows. Generally, if there's a girl out on Union Avenue walking, there usually be a pimp walking behind her, or her trafficker walking maybe 10, 20 feet behind her, because they want to see what car she's going to get into, the make, model, and year, in case something happens to her. A lot of these girls, they end up in a field, beaten and left for dead. Talked to several women over the years who've been left for dead because the guy just wanted to get sex and then beat her, pistol whipped her or whatever. But there was always a man in the shadows with Lachey, and he had gotten sick. He had a stomach ailment, and I said, hey, his name was Mr. Freeze. I said, where's Mr. Freeze? And she said, oh, he's back in the room. He's not feeling good. He has stomach problems. And instantly I heard the Lord tell me yogurt. And I said, does he like yogurt? And she goes, yeah. And I said, you know what, we just got a shipment into the church. I'd love to bring him some yogurt. When we get done, can we come by and bring him some yogurt? She goes, yeah, that'd be real nice. So we get done ministering. We go back by and we dropped off some yogurt for him. That was it. And about a week later, we saw her again, and she said, man, I want to thank you. That really touched him. And so he comes out of the shadows, and he goes, hey, what's your name? And I said, Pastor Doug. He goes, hey, what's up, Pastor? He goes, don't be surprised if I show up at your church and give up this lifestyle. And I said, oh. I said, okay. I said, I go to this little church over here. He goes, you don't have to tell me where you go to church. He goes, I already did my homework on you, homeboy. He goes, I know everything about you, and don't be surprised if I give up the game and go to your church. He said, I was raised in church. I have a praying mama and a praying grandma.
Wow.
And I know what I'm doing isn't right, but I do know the Lord. And like I said, don't be surprised if I show up at your church and give up this lifestyle. So him and I just started building a relationship with him because he needs Christ, just as much as anybody else. So building a relationship with him, we talk antique cars. We both like classic cars. A few months later, maybe 2 months later, there was a 12-year-old out walking on Union Avenue. And Mr. Free saw her, and he said, hey, who's your handler? And she told him who her pimp was. And he said, go back to your daddy and tell him that you're too young to be out here, and tell him tell him that Mr. Freeze said that. So she went back and told him, her trafficker, and that trafficker, one of his friends, came down and pulled Mr. Freeze out of his room, beat him, and 3 days later he died.
Oh, my.
So I was only,
This is the real stuff, isn't it?
yeah, I spoke at his funeral. I was the only white person at the funeral, and I got to really encourage his mother and his grandmother.
Yes.
The way I read the Bible, man, it says that your faith takes you to heaven, And,
Right.
I'm not sure if he's there. Honestly, I kind of believe maybe he is,
I do too.
as far-fetched as that might
Sure.
sound to some of our viewers. But I know that he was convicted, convicted in his heart. So, I think we're going to be really surprised who we see in heaven, and probably even more surprised at who we don't.
Yeah. Well, my little story is I just ran into a woman who used to work in a fast food restaurant, an older woman, worked in a fast food restaurant down on Union, and she said there was this one prostitute who used to come in to get out of the heat, and she would give her a free, soda, and sometimes a little bite to eat, and this went on for a long time, and then she kind of lost track of her, and then she said, sometime later, a very nicely dressed woman came in to the shop, and said to her, "You don't remember me, do you?" And she said, "No." She said she was so nicely dressed, and she had I think she had a Mercedes sitting out in the parking lot, and it was a very nice car, very fashionable. And she said, "I'm the woman that used to come in here, and you would give me something to drink in the heat." And she said, "My word," she said, "what happened to you?" And she said, "Well, I've met someone." And she assumed that it must be a sugar daddy of some kind because all of the trappings of wealth. So she said, "Would you like to meet him?" And she said, "How could I pass up an invitation like that to meet the guy that had so changed this woman's life?" And so she said, "Yeah." And so she got her at some point into the Mercedes, and they drove off, and they went to a charismatic church. and it freaked the woman out. She'd never been in that kind of exuberant, vibrant worship, and it really freaked her out. But she didn't say anything. She was expecting to meet some man there, and finally she said, I've met Jesus."
Come on.
That's wonderful.
And she became a very successful entrepreneurial businesswoman. And the Mercedes she had purchased herself, but just in meeting the Lord made that change in her life.
Right. Are we looking at a break right now, Chris? Okay, we're going to go to break. We'll be right back.
I've met somebody.